So this is what a live meetup looks like here at Jayme's Bass Academy. We do them at least once a month, sometimes twice. And if you want to come join us for the next one, just click on the link that's in the description. We'll see you there. Hey, Hans, how's it going, man?
Yeah, Jayme, how you doing, buddy?
Good. Sorry, Mike, you were saying PreSonus, which one?
I bought one of those PreSonus USB 96s.
Cool, yeah, I've got a few of those.
I'm not technically savvy, so a buddy is going to come over and help me try to figure out how to, get it going so I can have better. I don't think you're going to be able to hear my bass. So.
Well, you know what? There is a curriculum here in the library called The Bassist Guide to Recording, and I take you through like the first 7 or 8 levels of like I just bought it. What do I plug things into? What software do I need? What are the terms I need to know? And like I've already got like 7 or 8 lessons on that. You'll find it probably in the gear section.
Okay.
I know I added that recently. Dwayne, hey, how's it going, man? Good to see you too.
Hey, how are you?
Man, I can't complain. I like the lights behind you, dude. Purple's a good look. Or is it blue?
I'm adjusting my lighting in my office.
Yeah, there you go. I got that too somewhere. I've got 2 different scenes in my room. Straight red, or this is one I call Tequila Sunrise. So it's blue up top and then orange on the bottom and red against that wall. And I don't know why. The Tequila Sunrise is the best name I could come up with. Or
nice.
I like this one, just the sinister, everything's red. Then my face gets all kind of messed up. So
my wife hates the red lights. So
yeah. It's important, man.
I got to get into the 21st century here.
Oh, come on.
I'm sitting in my living room or the family room here. So.
No, it's a good look too. You know what? This is a family room. This is the second floor of my house. I don't know if you guys have ever seen videos of the studio, but this is just the second floor that I retrofitted into a studio, which is something I've been doing since high school. This is like my 6th or 7th studio build. My dad and I started building them in 1996. So we would take a room in the house and turn it into the jam room. And then eventually that room got too small. So we took over the garage. And then, we kept moving it out. The last house I had in California had a studio upstairs. And this wasn't supposed to be a studio because when we moved here, I was a touring guy. And we moved to Vegas January 1st of 2020, and touring turned off 2 months later. So after being here for 5 years, I was like, well, I should do something with this space because it was just a bonus room upstairs that we didn't have anything to do with. So, Mike, I'm with you. I would have just regular rooms, nothing special. I'm not into that stuff at all. But if you give me square footage and nothing to do with it, I'm going to turn it into a studio.
Yeah, but it's cool on YouTube to watch your videos, when you're in there. And it's a nice look. I like your cameras with the old Frankenstein movies.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, those are just green screens. That's a picture frame. That's a picture frame that I bought from Target. Put some green construction paper, and then so OBS is the software I use to do all my recording and everything. And yeah, I put
up on that stuff, man.
Yeah. Well, I always was. I was even like the last few years of touring that I did, I was always into like, what's the new technology? What are the video game streamers using? Yeah. I was in 2016 trying to figure out, how do I trigger that with my bass? If I play a G, how do I get this picture to jump up on the screens? Like, I don't know, because they were doing that stuff already. It wasn't in the music scene yet.
Yeah.
So I'm always trying to borrow from other technologies. What's some cool stuff that they're doing? And even, with gear, with playing, like I hear a saxophone player do something sick and I'm like, yo, how do I do that? I know no one's ever going to pay me to do it, but there's got to be a way I can squeeze that into Earth, Wind, and Fire or whatever it is.
See what Dwayne's holding up there, that studio, whatever that was?
Oh, the Stream Deck.
Yeah. Oh, I got 3 of those. Yeah.
Oh man. See, I gotta get on board here, guys.
Yeah. What does that do, Dwayne?
So at one point I had like 5 cameras set up, and you can use a Stream Deck to like switch between scenes just by pushing a button.
Cool.
So the Stream Deck is what Twitch streamers and video game streamers use to, like, you've probably seen even on my videos, like I'll hit it's this angle and then all of a sudden we'll be on a different angle, or there'll be 2 angles on screen. I'm hitting a button and it's just switching the scene, right? But all it is, it's a macro keyboard that you could write it to do any number of key combinations, or you could write it for your software to do whatever you want. But what I got into it for is like when I do Guitar Pro editing or anything where it's like I'm doing repetitive motions over and over and over again, you hit one button and it does 15 things. Hit one button and it does 15 things. You know, you program it to do what you want to do.
Yeah.
So anytime I have something like I need to transcribe a song or I need to edit drums or something like that, it's a macro keyboard. Hit one button, it'll do whatever I've programmed it to do. And the button itself is an LCD screen. So you don't have to put a sticker on it and remember, oh, this button does that function. I can just write on there whatever the function is. It'll appear on the screen itself. And then I can create layers and folders and have when I'm editing, when I'm streaming, when I'm filming, when I'm whatever. And then there's just all these buttons I can hit that'll do the things I need them that I've programmed them to do. But I don't have to like print out a sticker and write what the thing is on, stick it on it, and then remember where that is. It's just like, oh yeah, it's under the recording tab. Boom, hit the button, it does the thing. So, and I even use those on stage too. From 2017 to 2019, I used a Stream Deck on stage to switch between the backing tracks. Because the artist I was playing with would, instead of playing the song top to bottom, usually when you're playing with tracks and clicks and everything's locked in, you start the song and then you finish the song. Well, Shim didn't want to do that. He wanted to be able to stop in the middle, work the crowd for a little bit, and then come back and finish the song. So I would have like, hey, there he is. There's Cyril. Hey, Cyril, can you mute that audio for us, man? Or maybe I can. Hold on. Let me just see if I have the power to do it. Yeah. Okay, I can do it.
That was a novel thing to turn up to.
Yeah, I know that was a pretty good part of the song too. Hey, Dan, I didn't see you come in either, man. Welcome.
Hey.
We're just talking about the Stream Deck, the little gaming keyboard. But anyways, I would use it mid-song to stop this track, go to the bridge of that track, go back to the start of that one. Because on the keyboard, it wouldn't be like I'd have to look at a pedal board and remember which knob does what. Because mid-song, mid-show, that'll get you fired so fast. So I would just look at it and it would say Fearless Bridge, and I would know I'm hitting the bridge of Fearless, and then we would get into the bridge of that song. So that's what I originally bought the Stream Deck, because I was like, I can label these sections and not have to be over by the laptop, right? I can just run a USB cable to my microphone and just look and be like, oh yeah, that's the song, that's the section, and I would even write notes in there, like, because the keys light up and they have words on them, so it would say change basses, tune down, go over to keyboard, so I could actually write my stage notes on this little thing. So yeah, the Stream Deck, I'm all for it.
What does it interface to? Like, what does it control?
So it's it's made by a company called Elgato, Elgato, and so they have their own software that's how you program it. And then like YouTube writes for it, Twitch writes for it. Like certain softwares partner with Elgato and then write their own softwares specifically for those applications. But you can also just program it to make keystrokes, right? So it could be like whatever application's open, press 1, wait 3 seconds, hold down Alt and press Shift S, and then like you press that one button and it does those key commands in that order, but it'll do it for any application, right? So you have to make sure your program is open on the forefront. You don't have emails open and it's writing and typing, all of those things, But yeah, so that's all that's called a macro keyboard. Video gamers have been using them for 20 years. Programmers have been using them for 20 years. And so, yeah, I saw that technology in like 2010 and I was like, yo, how do I bring that to the stage? There's got to be a reason for me to have one of these. And every time, I would music direct, or I'd be launching tracks or whatever they're doing. Yeah, Dan's got what you're rocking down there? That's some kind of macro keyboard? Or his camera fell off and he was fixing it.
No, I'm muted as well at the same time, so it makes it's no use at all. So this is a Moonlander. Again, it's your macro keyboard.
Yeah.
Split into, and I can just press different keys, then it changes to different setups, so I know exactly what different buttons do depending on different.
Now, do the buttons have labels on them?
No, they're all blank. They're all blank, but they're RGB'd, so I know what they.
Yeah.
It's impossible to do this upside down.
No. I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're all RGB to different things. So I know in different setups they do different things.
So the Stream Deck is similar in that you can actually put a thumbnail or you can write text. Like the actual key itself is a screen, so you can have it say whatever you want it to say. And again, like when we're on stage and we're making changes, and like before the show, he's like, "Hey, let's cut this song and do that." Like I can foolproof make sure that I do it and then label it and just know that when I hit this key, everything that's supposed to happen is going to happen. And it's tethered into the lighting show. It's tethered into the pedal switching and all the other stuff that's going on. And I use Ableton Live for that stuff. That's not necessarily tethered to the Stream Deck, but I would control it with the Stream Deck. Anyways, that's a bunch of stuff I didn't plan on talking about. But hey, what do you guys want to talk about? Let's. Anyone got any questions? Anything you're struggling with? Cyril's at a gig right now, so he's busy. But Hans, what's up, man?
Yeah, just a topic for discussion. So I'm in a cover or tribute band, and nowadays a lot of the venues they want you to play for 4 hours.
Yeah,
basically. So,
yeah, we call those 9-to-1s.
Yeah, so you're looking at playing like 45 songs, and we play kind of hard rock music, so it's physically intense. So I've always realized that, like, to do that, you basically have to play lightly. If you're like playing like 100% full bore, you're not going to last 4 hours. You're going to fatigue. Yeah. So I've always, like, for many years, I've been like trying to change my technique. So like I play as lightly as possible, but still.
We're talking right hand, the striking hand.
Yeah, mostly, yeah, but still have the desired effect. So I use compression, I use overdrive, things like that. I boost mid-range. I do a lot of things to still have my bass have powerful impact, but without getting totally fatigued after 4 hours. I don't know. Just wanted to hear what people's thoughts were on that, or if you any thoughts on, or like, what experience have you had with that?
Yeah, sure. Well, let me say this: when that 7-week tour that I just got off back in the fall of last year, my number one concern was stamina. It was a 90-minute rock show, 60 to 90 minute, depending on the venue. But like, I was 33 the last time I did that. Now I'm 38, and it's like, oh yeah, you got to jump off drum risers. Do I have the lung capacity to sing and scream for that long? Like, I remember the last time doing these, like, the first couple of nights, like, I'm physically tired, man. I was like, rock and roll's a young man's game, and you can say what you want about my age, but it's been a few years since I did this. So if you watched any of my preparation videos, or maybe I haven't uploaded these ones yet, the thing that I focused on most was just the stamina of playing for 90 minutes straight. Yeah. Because I don't do that anymore. At one point in my career I did, but I don't anymore. So it's not like I'm afraid that I'll get the notes wrong or I'll mess up the parts of the song. Like, I'll have that down. I'm not worried about that. But the thing that I was really worried about was like, am I going to get 2 weeks in and be like, oh no, I could only play for 75 minutes and then the rest of it's downhill? Because I'm like that with bowling. The first 5 frames are great. The last 15 are awful. I get, you get tired and you get worse. So that was my biggest concern when I took the tour. So yeah, stamina was the most important thing I practiced. I would hit the set twice a day. So 2 times I would play 90 minutes. It's 3 hours a day, but I broke it up into 2 different blocks because I knew that was going to be an issue, just making it through the show. So I would make that one of the things to practice is like, oh yeah, 4 hours of playing is rough. Well, yeah, let's practice playing for 4 hours.
I'm 54, by the way. I'm 54.
All right, and you're killing it, man. Yeah, that aspect doesn't get easier,
I'm 77.
So yeah. Hey, there you go, Trent. Killing it, man. That's good.
No comment here.
For me, Hans, what I do is I bring way more amp than I need, right?
Yeah.
So like my primary amp right now is 1600 watts because I want to be able to turn up to the point where I don't have to play loud.
Yeah.
Right? Now on stages where we're using IEMs, I can adjust my IEM so that what I'm hearing in the mix is good because you're never going to be able to outperform, 8,000 watts of subs on stage. You're just not going to be able to, whatever you bring, to the equation. But, for times where I'm using a wedge or depending on stage volume, I bring as much amp as possible so I don't have to play hard to be heard.
Yeah, I that's basically what I do as well. Yeah, I agree. That makes a lot of sense.
And I would also like take that a step further. Do you guys know who Brian Beller is? Bass player for Aristocrats and Steve Vai and all those guys.
Yeah.
One thing I heard him say once was that for bass amps in general, like beyond everything that Dwayne just said, they actually sound better when you run them that way. A guitar amp is different. You want low wattage, crank the shit out of it until it's screaming for its life, and then put a mic on it. That's a great sounding guitar amps for rock and roll, especially. But when it comes to bass, you want the exact opposite. Headroom for days, and then barely tap into it. And get your saturation and your overdrive on the way in, you know? But the amp itself, when it's screaming for life, it starts farting out on those notes, right?
Okay.
So if you get way more wattage than you think you need, and then you tap into half capacity or less, and if you need more, add speakers or add more wattage. But like that was something I learned from him early on. Was like, oh yeah, lots of power and then barely touch it, you know, and get it. If you can get that screaming, you're gonna have headroom for days on your bass tone, and then you can play anywhere in between. And then also another thing I was gonna recommend, Hans, have you tried? There's a bass. What is it? The Spectre NS Pulse.
No, I haven't.
No. I just toured with it. I took it's the NS Pulse 2. There's 2 versions of it, but that was the bass I took with me. It has such a hot output. Like you whisper on the bass and it's clang, clang, clang. It sounds like every note you play is that ding wall clicky, you know, super even attack.
Okay.
And when I play with a pick, I usually lean in really, really hard because I'm not very good with my picking technique. And so like I just end up playing harder. My forearm tends to hurt. With this bass, that's not an issue. You could grab the thinnest pick, just barely move in, and it sounds like whack, 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 like you're smacking the instrument. That makes it, you know, kind of proprietary for active rock and metal and that kind of stuff. But you can dial back the preamp, the treble, and you know, get less of that smack from it. But I'm telling you, that is the most reactive bass. It almost felt like playing a MIDI keyboard, you know, like a piano, you can wow, 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 wow. Whereas like on a MIDI keyboard, you can just set it so you barely touch it and it's wow, it's the loudest volume it can give you. That's what this bass feels like. It's just like every note is really loud, even articulation. And I'm sure there's other instruments too that have that kind of modern preamp. I think EMG makes it. EMG makes the preamp and the pickups that go in the bass. But I don't know if you've ever, if you haven't checked out what Spectre's doing at about the $1,000 level, that seems to be the sound and what they're going for. So I don't know. Maybe check that out. That might help because it'll give you the smack you want. And I'm telling you, dude, you don't have to lay into it. You can play so softly on that instrument, and it brings the attack for you. I don't know how to do it, but they are.
Yeah, that's I found that using a humbucking pickups and a preamp does help. Yeah, it's more reactive or has higher sensitivity. So
Sure,
you just have to touch it a little bit, and that it gives you like a strong signal.
And that's been my thing in general is when it comes to playing with lots of attack, let the electronics do the work.
Yeah,
you know, if you need more volume, go crank it up. If you need more low end, go crank it up. Like I will do things mid song to do that out. But if it's like every song needs to be there, well, just let the electronics do it. We've got great technology these days. You know, you don't have to rely on your hands alone. So yeah, there's definitely, you know, technologies out there to help with that.
I think that I was relating to what Hans was saying because I played in a cover band, a little local cover band here, and we played for probably 4 hours a night, you know, 2 or 3 on the weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday night.
Yeah,
they would always want to start off with that Billie Jean, and man, my hand, I told them, you got to move that to the last of the set, or I'm not going to make it because my hand would cramp up, you know.
Yeah.
Doom, 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 you know.
Yep.
Drive me crazy. But I found that you know, the challenge, the 4-note scale up and down. I'm having problems with that, by the way.
Oh, good. You and me both.
But man, that really helps your endurance, you know. And going down, I can't do it. I mean, I'm not there yet. Going up, I'm kind of okay.
Okay.
Yeah, but going down is my brain just has a fart there and doesn't want to do that.
Yeah. In which case, that's just you just got to rely on repetition.
Yeah.
You know, literally because you said it. You're like, my brain can't keep up with it. And it's like, yeah, your ears and your hands should be doing it.
Yeah.
Well, how do they get to the point where they can do it without my brain telling it to? Yeah, we call that muscle memory, and it's just repetition, you know? So it's different for everyone how long it takes. But when you can get to the point, not where I'm not thinking about it anymore, but just I don't need to think about it because these know what to do. Yeah. How many times? A few hundred more, a few thousand more. You'll get there.
I'm playing catch up to you guys. Like when I heard Dan do that solo on this last.
Yeah.
Man, that was awesome, dude. That was awesome.
Slayed it.
What is that solo? Like, what is that?
that was we were doing production music. Which here's what a production music session goes like. It is soul crushing because usually when you're making music, you're trying to do something that's good. When you're making music for TV and film, you need 6 finished products by the end of the day, right? Like it usually takes a couple of weeks to do one. We're doing all of them. They're done. Mixed, mastered, sent off. It's got to get out of here.
They need to sound inoffensive as well. Inoffensive and nice and generic.
The way that I explain it, if you know what yes and is, right? Yes and is a improvised, like, I mean, not just music, comedians, actors, like you always say yes and then the next thing. There's no. As soon as you say no, you killed the scene and the improv is over. So it's musical yes and. There's no no's. Meaning, like, someone throws out an idea, you're like, yep, that's the verse. And then we get to the chorus. Throw your hands up. Yeah, cool. Next song, right? You're just trying to get out of it. That's because if you don't, you're not going to have as many songs. And then your library is smaller, and then you're not going to get picked up. So you just have to put out stuff regardless of whatever it is. So that song we put together with a lot of samples. I had a real drummer and guitar player. The horn section was samples. I played bass on it. And then we get to this bridge and we're like, do you want to write a bridge? We got to go, man. Let's get out of here. So I'm like, here, this is something they'll never ask you to do. And I just, I took one pass shred of not thinking about anything. And we looked at each other and we're like, yeah, that's good enough. And just went on to the next. So like, yeah, that was a total BS. I can guarantee that part is not in the movie or the show or whatever they got. But like there needed to be something there. And
I bet it was great fun to transcribe after the fact.
Dude, that took how long did it take you to learn it? Double.
Oh, that was
like it took me.
That was probably 4 or 5 hours. That was of just
all right, dude. It shows. Congrats.
Working from like 50% speed, like just like right, okay, I can do that. I'm happy. 60%.
Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, killed it, dude. Well, and that's the fun thing about like that song in general is like I put it at a difficulty like 4 or 5 out of 5. That's one of the more difficult solos like here on the site. But the rest of it's really straightforward, you know. And it's all about note length and note choice. And there's a couple of cool flashy licks. But like if you're brand new or if you're intermediate or if you're pretty advanced, like there's something in that song for you, you know. And that's what I think that's the kind of player I like to be. And that's the kind of player I encourage people to be is, you know, if the song requires you to be here, walk into it up here. That way you can come down at any point. Or sorry, you can play the song where it's supposed to be. And if at any point someone's looking around like, man, we just need some more energy. Well, you can crank up the heat without sweating. And everyone will look at you and be like, oh, shit, yeah, let's lean into that. You know, like that's what gets jam sessions and live tracking sessions when you're in the studio with 3 or 4 other musicians. Like those are the things where everyone stays at the same level. And then the drummer just lets you know, hey, I can do this. And everyone else goes, yeah. And you get this little lift at the same time. Then it comes back to where the song's supposed to be. You know, whereas if you're doing it at the opposite, if the song requires you to be here and you're actually kind of down there, you're not going to rise to the occasion. The band's going to have to come down to where you're at. And then they're going to come back up here and you're going to stay down here the whole time. You know what I mean? It doesn't work the other way around. So sort of like the bass amp, have way more headroom, have way more power, know way more tricks than you need to know. And then, if an opportunity presents itself, you can take the lead for the second instead of the singer, the guitar player, or someone else. And people remember that. Not just that, like, you can shred, but they'll remember, like, hey, this is an idea guy. He's not just like, tell me what to play. Where's the chart? Oh, I can't do anything if I don't have either of those two pieces of information. Like, when people know, like, this is someone who can roll with the punches, we can invite him in, and not only are we going to have a good time, but like, we're going to come up with something great and something usable and fast. Those are things that, in those specifically in the sync music section, that's what it's called, sync music, synchronized, SYNC, TV and film music. If you can roll that way in those sessions, that's how you get 20 songs in a month. You go to 3 or 4 of those sessions, and then that's everything you need to do for a year. And in that world, because it takes 3 years for anything to land. So, like, all the recording I did in 2020, those songs got placed last year. They just sat on somebody's hard drive for 3 years, going from lawyer to lawyer until somebody picks it up. So that's the other reason I say that music is soul crushing, because you can't care about it. You just have to pump it out and move on to the next. So Dan, that solo was me just trying to not do that, trying to squeeze a little bit of fun into the situation. So I'm glad you dug it.
No, they probably not listened that far into the song before they've already decided whether it's being used or not. It's like, yeah, that's great, chuck it in, that's fine.
Yeah,
that'll do.
Yeah, I was watching a video talking about the algorithm now is making everyone write 2-minute songs or less. Like, most of the number ones are 1 minute and 36 seconds. 1 minute and 50 seconds is about too long for a pop song today, because it's all about, does it trend on TikTok or social media, and those are 60 seconds or less. So can you go, chorus, verse, chorus, or verse, chorus, verse? Like, can you squeeze that into 30 seconds?
Yeah, it's got to be literally a verse and a chorus. That's it. And it's just going to be something that's going to be repeatable on TikTok. Everyone's going to recognize it. And then you go, because we've been we've been teaching them, like teaching kids these songs. They're like, oh, we want to do this Willow Smith song. And like, you listen to 15 seconds of it, and you're like, oh, that's cool. That's got a cool little bass hook. This will be a cool song. And then you listen to the whole song, you're like, oh, that was it.
Yeah,
that was the whole song. It's just,
yeah,
it's just that repeated 3 times, then it's over. It's so dull.
Well, it's
what people want. So,
like, the means always dictate what happens. It's kind of like fade out endings. Like, why did every song have a fade out in the 60s? Like, well, the mixing console came out in the 60s. Which means that they had a fader that they could drag down, and the whole volume would change. And they went, yeah, let's do that. Like, it was just a new technology, and then everyone hopped on it, right? Or why were there, like, my wife yesterday, we bought a turntable for Christmas, so we've been listening to vinyl records, and one of the questions she asked was like, why did this album didn't need to be split up. Like, they could have put these 3 songs here, and they made it into like 2 discs or whatever. And I was like, well, you can only fit so many songs on one side. There were limitations, you could get so many minutes. And so you had to split it up between A and B. You couldn't fit it all on one. It was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But like, if you've only ever had CDs, well, I mean, CDs had, 700 megabytes. You could put a lot of minutes, over an hour on a CD, but not on a vinyl disc, like, you're limited to what you can do. And that's why what is it? Hey Jude, that's a Beatles song that just kind of runs out of time. They just kept looping it, and then bop, like, the song ends, because, well, that was the point. They wanted to run out of tape. You could run out of tape at one point. Like, you can't really run out of hard drive space these days. So sometimes, like, the limitations or the technology itself influences what all the artists do. This is just the next generation of that. Does it happen to get, like, shorter and dumber and easy? Like, yeah, I guess you could paint it that way, but it ain't going back. I don't think, I don't think it's going backwards. I think it's just going to be more.
It's just, it's not cyclical, because people, it's not that it'll be cyclical. It's just there's, countercultures. So you have the TikTok songs, and then you have a big drive of indie music as well. It's not like,
exactly.
It's not like that music isn't out there and it's not doing well. It's just not the mainstream, and that's fine, because we have so much access to not the mainstream anymore. You don't.
Well, and that's the thing. Yeah, what is mainstream?
Exactly. It doesn't need to be the thing that's on MTV or whatever anymore. It can be on. You just actually go on Spotify and just listen to what I want to listen to.
Yeah. I was just on the road, man. Rock and roll is still alive. They're still out there doing it. It's great. But yeah, you're not going to find it on the radio, not really. And if it is on the radio, it's songs from 20 years ago, you know, or older, you know.
There's a great documentary called Before the Music Dies. If you haven't watched it, you should absolutely watch it.
Yeah.
One of their basic premises was like, there was a time where the people making music were older people that actually had something to say, right?
Yeah.
And it's trended younger, where people don't necessarily have the life experience to make something that is thought provocative, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's kind of interesting to see, you know, how that trend has changed.
Not only that, I remember Zappa. I'm a huge Frank Zappa fan. And one thing he said in an interview, not just because the songwriters and the executives were older, and so they had something to say and they had experience. Another thing they did is they took risks. Because in the 60s and the 70s, like, yeah, it was that's who was running the show. And they knew they were out of touch with these young kids. And so they're like, let's give that a shot. Jackson 5, go for it. Let's do that. Like, let's just they took risks. Nowadays, no one takes risks. Everyone goes, what trended last week? Let's make another one of those. Star Wars, Marvel, yeah. Here's 20 more of those, right? Like, no one's throwing out new ideas because what if you lose your money, right? Like, yeah, that's a risk. That's a risk. Why would you take a risk when you know you got a slam dunk? It's a slam dunk every time, you know? And that has a cost too. You have less people, less Frank Zappas, less Beatles, less people going, what if we came at it from this angle? You know? Yeah, you're going to have less of those, but, you know, you're going to have like tons of industry, tons of content, and it's never been easier to make it. Not because, you know, everyone's so good these days, but the bar comes down. Technology brings the bar down, you know? So a definition of making it, air quotes, could mean a lot of different things. Whereas in 1980, it meant very specifically, you played at the Whiskey A Go-Go, then you got on the radio, and then you were opening for Aerosmith or whoever. Like, that was the path. If you didn't do those things, there's no way. There's no way. You know, you can't call all those venues and book a tour. How are you going to do it? You don't have a phone book that big. Whereas now I can go on ChatGPT and say, give me emails and addresses and phone numbers for the top 50 booking agents or whatever, like whatever you're looking for. And then there you go. Make your phone calls. Or you can even tell ChatGPT, write me an email to send to all these assholes. There you go. Connect it to your Gmail, write all these emails, and don't press send. I'll read them afterwards and make sure that they go. So come on. Like the trade-off's always going to be awesome, but it does come at a caveat of like, yeah, less people care, less people support, and you know, there's less attention to it, bringing it into mainstream. And as long as you can deal with that, you're gonna be fine. You know, so I have hope. I'm an optimist. I think we're gonna use these tools for good instead of being taken over by the robots. But you never know. You never know, man. Can't tell these days. Anyone have any questions that aren't self-destructing, aren't about the end of music in the world? I do have one here. Someone dropped in in one of the circles who couldn't make it today. Yost, or I think it's Yost. Yost, I'm sorry if I'm getting your name wrong. It says, what are the benefits of placing compressors both at the end and the beginning of the signal chain? Just curious, who here uses a compressor in the signal chain? All right, so leave your hand up if it's at the beginning of your board. All right, put your hand up if it's at the end of your board. Anyone got one on both? Okay, Dan.
All the way through.
Yeah, all the way through, all the compressors. So this is something I was talking to Yost in the DMs, and I was like, hey, bring this up because I can elaborate easier than in text. So in the studio, like if you plug your bass into the Neve console or they mic up your amp, they're not going to run you into one compressor. They'll probably stack a few compressors. This one's to grab your peaks. This one's because this one's a FET compressor, so it's really fast, acting more like a limiter, whereas this one's a tube compressor. It's a little more sludgy, so it's going to add some sustain and saturation to your tone. So they use compressors not just for dynamic limiting or dynamic controlling, but also to add tone or variation, or to get it to sit with the kick drum, because they've got a few tricks. So that was when I was like, the question isn't, oh, does my compressor go at the beginning or at the end? The question became, how many compressors do I need? And where should I place them, depending on what I'm trying to do. And the reason why Yost asked this is because he saw a video I did yesterday about the Luminal Booster Ultra from Dark Glass, and he said the compressor's at the end, and that kind of bugs him. Or maybe it was at the beginning. It's just not where he normally places it. And my suggestion was like, well, a compressor at the end is intended to like take everything, and it's like it's the final piece of the funnel before it goes out and hits everyone's ears. So the job of that compressor is more of a loosey-goosey, like, let's just rope everything in, tie it, put a nice little bow on it, and make it presentable. If that's the way you can think of that compressor. So I'm not trying to do crazy things with it, just a little bit of gain reduction, a little bit of a longer release. I just want it to make the bass sound good. Whereas I want to bring the bass zoom here. I want it to smack you in the face, and I want it to go... Well, that compressor belongs at the beginning, because I'm going to hit it before my overdrive or after my overdrive. Like, you can play with it and do what you want with it. But if the effect is more like compression, bow, I put that at the beginning. Or if it's the kind of thing that I'm just going to leave it on always and never touch it because it's barely doing anything, you might not even notice it, that compressor goes at the end. And there's no wrong. You can put them in the middle too. Or like, here's the compressor I use when I play with the pick. Here's one set up for fingers. Here's one set or slapping. Here's one set up for tapping, because you adjust your attack and your release times. Those all go at the beginning. And the one that's at the end is like that final tube compressor. It's hardly on. It's just adding some ooey gooey. You can't even tell. But when you turn it off, you go, hey, I lost it. I'm not feeling it anymore. Turn it on. You're like, oh, it's full. It's fat. It's whatever. That's what that compressor does.
What brand do you like?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Which ones do you like? I kind of like the Origin. Is that it?
Origin effects? Yeah. I think that's what it is. They're all modeling the same handful of compressors. So when it comes to like who does the best version of it, I don't really care. I care more about the style of compression. So the compressors I put at the end would be opto or optical compressors. Think the Teletronics LA2A that's made by Universal Audio now. That's about $3,000. It's all tube and it sits in a rack. It goes in your recording studio. That's not like, you don't bring these onto the gig. The one I would hit first would be a DBX 160. It's very fast. It's the easiest compressor to set because you don't have to touch it. You just turn it on, and if you see the needle moving, you're doing too much compressing because the needle is slow. It wasn't a good device, but you just put it in there, don't touch it, and you're like, hey, yeah, that sounds good. It's doing that much compressing. And then you run that into an 1176, also made by Teletronics or Universal Audio today. Like, that signal chain right there is about $10,000 if you buy the real ones, right? Yeah. Between the DBX 160 VU, I'm going to guess that's $2,000. A real 1176, that's about $2,000 or $3,000, and an LA2A, that should be about another $2,000 or $3,000, right? And in tax, yeah, it's about $10,000. So the Origin Effects Blue Stripe is, or whatever the blue one is, that's mimicking an 1176 Rev A, which is a Blue Stripe 1176. Of course, there's different versions depending on which era. This is the same as pre-CBS Fender or post-1965. Who cares? It's a P bass, yo. Right? Like, it's not that hard. So you can go way down the rabbit hole with this stuff. I did at one point. I don't think it matters. I think what does matter is the style of compression. So is it a fast one like a DBX? You can find out which ones those are. Is it 1176 style, another fast one, really upfront and in your face? You can find out which ones those are. Or is it a slow, gooey compressor is the way I would call it. Those are tube compressors. That's your LA2A style. Again, I put those ones more towards the end. So, and again, if it comes down to brands, compression is compression. So the style of that compressor, and then does it have gain meters so I can see how much reduction I'm doing so I can make up for it? Those are like the only tools I need, because it's hard to do compression by ear. It's easier to see it on the meters.
You don't use one on a pedal board?
On the pedal board, I've used several, but that's like I'm trying to do something live that, again, If I'm in the studio, well, I'll just use those tools
Right.
because they're better. But the live version, Dark Glass is mimicking an 1176, so their compressors are great. And you can look up in the manual which ones they're emulating.
And it's usually pretty clear for the 76s because almost every 76 emulator is called a 76. Like the origin effect,
76,
Cali
right?
76. You're like, okay.
Yeah, and if it's the blue stripe one versus the black stripe one versus, that's just different eras of it. And again, if you're an engineer, you would know what those differences are. I barely know what the differences are, and I don't care. I just know if I have an 1176, it's going to go whoa. It's going to bring it up to your face. Okay. And if I want the bass to do this, then that's an LA2A style or an optical compressor. Okay. So I've done so much gear stuff, videos and all that. Like, I can't say there's been a bad compressor. They pretty much all do the job. The question is like, is this a good compressor for slap? Because I can't adjust the attack and release. You kind of need to be able to do that for slap. Well, no, that's not a good compressor for slap. But is that a good compressor for put it at the end of the chain and just leave it on all the time? Sure. Because I don't really need to mess with the attack and release for that one so much as just the amount of compression I want to do.
The Source Audio Atlas compressor was on my board for a while.
Nice.
And it was just overkill.
Really?
Right? I mean, like, you go into the app and there's so much that you can do in terms of input EQ, output EQ, whether you're running them parallel,
yeah.
And I was like, too much. Get it off my board.
That's Source Audio. They love overkill.
100%.
Yeah, I've got an Atlas that's my, like, if I'm doing a pedal compressor, if I just need to take a compressor, because I don't go into it too much, but again, it's got, like, I can just set it to be a 76, like, cause you can set it to have two inputs. So I set it so that it goes input 1, 76 out.
So he's stacking compressors within one compressor,
and then it goes through the rest of the chain, goes back into it again for an LA2A at the end, and then out at the other end.
Yeah,
which is kind of cool. You can just, like,
he's doing exactly what I'm talking about with one pedal. Yeah.
It just takes a bit of setup to get it to do that.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, and that's the thing. When it comes to compression, it's much more important that you know how to compress, what a compressor does, the mathematics of what you're doing, and then how to make it up. It's much less tweaker friendly. There's some effects like distortion and delay where it's like, just go to town. There's no wrong answers because you're just making whatever. But, like, you can screw your sound up with the compressor because you're trying to fix something and you don't know how to fix.
That's why I don't use one. I'm like,
yeah, there you go.
It squishes the sound. To me, to my ears, it squishes my tone. I'm like, so I'm probably overused. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'd rather not have one than try to deal with all that.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is, like, your engineer knows how to. So you could just let your engineer do it. Like, you could never, ever, ever touch a compressor and be totally fine. The only reason why you would want to alleviate that from your engineer is because then you're putting that on that person's brain, like, ooh, whenever this guy's around, my job's easier. Like, I didn't have to compress it. He did it already, and it sounded great. I'm going to call that guy next time. Anytime you make someone else's job easier, you're desirable for sure. So anyways, Yost, I know that probably didn't answer your question directly, but it's in there somewhere if you go looking for it. Was there another one? Why is there an alteration on the last note of Marry Me and not 8 and 12? Oh, I don't know. that could be.
I think the bass talking about it goes from. Is that what is it? My brain is off. The B A F sharp. The But in the first time around, it goes B A F.
Okay. Well, that could be
that's the
just
question.
a typo. That's probably just a typo. Dan, since you put in so much time in it, do you happen to know if that matches what the bass track is doing?
Yeah, I haven't really. Honestly, I play without the bass track, so maybe. I've assumed it's there for a reason, but I also assumed it might be a typo, so
There's two versions of every Guitar Pro file. One where it's the backing track and the MIDI bass. And then there's one with no backing track, and it's my bass specifically. In Guitar Pro, I can't have two audio files. So you you can only listen to the computer rendered bass guitar with the track. You can't hear my bass guitar. So I would have to go listen and see if that's something that I did, that if I actually played it or if it's a typo. And here's the thing. That whole setup of talking about it's musical yes and, that includes mistakes. So maybe I meant to play the one note, played the other one instead, and we all just went, who cares? Next song.
He fesses up.
Right? Yeah, just next song. Like, if I go back and fix it, it's not going to make the difference.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we're talking thousands of dollars are at stake here if we spend another minute on this. Like, that's what those sessions are. So, like, quite often, if it's in tune and it's fine, let's just keep going. Because I can tell you what, when this song ends up on RuPaul's Drag Race, which is, we've got a lot of songs on that show, in Jersey Shore, we did almost the entire Jersey Shore soundtrack last season. I don't know why. Apparently, we've got our fingers on the pulse of that one. This song wasn't on it. But, like, no one from that network is calling and being like, hey, there's an F sharp. Oh, and it should be an F natural. Can you guys fix it? And if they have a problem, they'll fix it because they can just click on it and go, boop, transpose. So, like, that's what no one cares. No one's actually paying attention. So that could be the reason, Cyril. I honestly don't know. I'm going to do some homework because now I'm curious.
Pretty sure it's a typo. I've just had a quick listen.
Okay.
It sounds just sounds like it's going to F sharp. So.
Okay, good. Thank you, Dan. So either way, I messed up, but was it a mess up of the transcribing or the playing? And it was the transcribing. So the problem has been solved. Thank you, Dan. Guys, anything else? Anything questions? Anything else I can help you with? Let me plug in the power from my. Actually, hold on, Hans. I have one more idea for you. I just plugged in the power. And I'm going to unplug it because over here, I got to grab something. Give me 1 second. Is it in here? It is. Okay. Hold on. I can't hear you yet because I took my dang headphones off. All right. Hans, you were talking in the beginning about, digging in too hard over the course of the 4-hour gig. And is there anything to play less? Have you, not play less, but help you regulate how hard you're playing based, I'm assuming, on how well you can hear yourself. Have you ever heard of one of these? The backbeat?
No.
Okay, does anyone know what this is? Have you guys heard of this before? This is a prototype.
I love my backbeat.
Yeah, okay, Dan, you got one? So
this is
a prototype, and he actually made a lot of changes based on a video that I did. So this is a personal subwoofer. Here's the strap. It hooks onto the strap, right? So this is on your back. It's basically like, right here in between your shoulder blades. And it's a personal subwoofer. It only adds So that feeling you get when you're standing behind your amp and you're playing and you're like, man, I can really feel the bass. And you take 2 steps this way and all of a sudden that's gone. You can still hear yourself, but like all the rumble disappeared. Like I don't have any anymore. So what that does is that just puts the on your back and you can control the volume of it. So basically you go bass into the backbeat into your pedal board or your amp or whatever it is. And then no matter where you are on stage, you've got that It's not necessarily volume. You can't hear it. You can only feel it, right? It's a subwoofer that just puts the bass right up against your body. Okay, you've got one too, Dan? Nice. That looks like one of the second versions. This one, I was doing a tour in 2017 or 18, and Yurko, the guy who owns this, he's somewhere close to Detroit. We were playing there, and I was like, I'm playing 2 basses, so here's the video. Drop one of these off. I'll put it on one bass, and I'll do the rest of the tour where one of them I get the backbeat, the other bass I don't. And then I'll really be able to tell you, is this thing worth it, right? Because I'll have gigged 17 more shows on it, and half of the time I got to feel my bass, and half of it I didn't. And so, did it really make a difference? Was it fun? Whatever. And I can tell you, man, that the bass where I didn't have to use this, like I hated those songs because it was an in-ears only gig, no amps on stage, and sometimes there were no subs underneath where I was playing. So no matter where you are, you got the rumble. And so then I could play a little less hard, and because you're feeling it right there. And if I need more feel, I just turn up the feel. You got a full volume on that basically. And so, dude, I loved it. And then every time I would have to switch basses for the other songs that were in a different tuning, shit. And the song changes were too fast, so I couldn't share them. And I called Yurko halfway through the tour, and I was like, dude, send me a second one. This totally sucks. And this was the last one. Those were his prototypes. He gave me the last version. So like, man, I'm not even gonna have more for 6 months. So I just had to sweat through the rest of the tour. But yeah, so I don't know, Hans, have you ever heard of that? You ever seen those?
No,
before?
but that's an interesting idea. Yeah, how much do you know how much they go for? Like
Dan,
that?
do you know?
Yeah, they're not cheap. They're probably
400 or 500.
Yeah, in dollars, they're probably $400-$500. They're
That's
about
more or less.
300 GBP.
Okay, cool tip.
Hold on, I'm looking it up now.
They're pretty difficult to get hold of because they don't make many of them, so they're usually out of stock.
Small company, a guy named Yurko and his 2 children make them in the basement. They're all handmade.
The Gen
Family
2 versions have an aux in as well as the headphone out, so you can run it as an IEM.
That's what I told him.
Yeah.
It's
great.
I did a video on it. I released a video, and he called me afterwards. He was like, dude, I'm going to put all of your recommendations into the next version. And that was something I told him. I was like, yo, if you put an auxiliary cable in this, now drummers can use it and guitar players, because they'll put their IEM mix into it, not so that their guitar gets low end, but the kick drum and the bass, like they can feel it and they can set the roll off and how much they want. And then now your market isn't just bass players, but like anyone who's on stage that wants to feel the low end, like, well, now they can do it if you just put an auxiliary on it. And he was like, that's a good idea. I didn't get paid for it, so I need to call Yurko. I didn't know that he put that in there. That's awesome.
I got a quick question for you.
Yeah, Mike.
Is there a video where you show an application for the modes? Like I'm working on the modes,
Yeah.
catch up. But I get lost when trying to apply them in a situation where I'm playing. I'm like, I don't know, because I'm at that point where I'm doing a lot of catch up. I'm trying to undo some bad habits I learned, and all that. But I still don't quite understand how I'm supposed to apply those modes. Although I will say this, I play in church. I think I told you that.
Mm-hmm.
And occasionally something will pop out, and I'm going, whoa, where'd that come from?
Sure.
And I know it's probably from me taking, studying and practicing more and stuff. But I think what I'm getting is it's not just so much learning the position, that the next, like from the C major scale to, the D Dorian.
Uh-huh.
But you need to know those notes all over the neck, right? Not just in that one.
It helps. It definitely helps, but not required.
Okay. So is there a video that you have that kind of demonstrates?
In the basis curriculum, there is essential scales, and we talk about modes. Have you watched any of those lessons already?
Yeah.
Okay, so when it comes to how to use modes, there is a lesson in there about how to use scales, right? But using modes, scales, like those 2 words are synonymous for each other. In fact, most instruments, this is a big discussion in music school. If you go get a degree and you're working through a music department, you can tell who the guitar players are because they talk about modes and no one else does. Yeah. Okay, now you can tell who the jazz guys are too, because I was a classical musician. So violinists don't care. Bass players don't care. Cellists don't care. Piano players don't care. Like, why are you talking about modes? Because it's the same notes and the same scale. Who cares? Here's who cares. As guitar players, technically all the violinists and all them, any fretted instrument should care about modes because they also play patterns. Classical musicians don't think of patterns because they play what's on the page. Do you see the difference?
Yeah.
They're not thinking and then using tools to come up to perform their thought. They don't need to think. They just need to read. They have a different skill, right? So I was late coming to modes as well because it was like my attitude until I was 24 was like, who cares about modes? What do you need them for? right? So how do you use modes? What's the benefit if so many people just don't care about it because it's the same thing over and over and over again? I'm sure you've seen in the video. I can demonstrate it here in 5 seconds, right? I could play C major. My bass on. I could play C major right here. I could play it here. I could play it here. Oh. I could play it here. I could play it here. Play it here. So that was all C major. But did you notice how I started here and then moved here and then moved here and then moved here and then moved here? Everywhere I was on the neck, I was playing in C major, wasn't I?
Yeah.
You can just say yes because maybe you don't know. But yes, I was. I was playing in C major and I was in the entire register of the instrument. So how do you use that in a song? Well, maybe your song doesn't need you to do any of that, right? Maybe your song doesn't require any of that stuff. But if you know where you are, no matter what the song is, no matter what the genre is, no matter what the key is, do you see how that could be beneficial?
Oh, yeah.
To whatever it is that you're playing. Because you might, what's that thing they're doing? And you listen, you're like, oh, it's just a Lydian scale. I know what that is. Okay, next. Like now I don't need to practice it because I know that's a Lydian scale and I can play a Lydian scale. So we don't need to work on that.
Yeah.
Or you know what I mean? Like, how do you use modes is more along the lines of, do you feel comfortable on the instrument no matter where you are? And if you get stuck somewhere, if I'm up here and I want to be down there, do you know how to work your way to it instead of just jumping down there?
Yeah.
You could use modes to get there. You can use arpeggios to get there. You have some other options. So the way I paint the picture of why do you need to learn modes? I mean, I guess you don't, because I went 20-something years without learning them, but it unlocks the fingerboard and you always know where you are. Whether you think of it in terms of a shape or a pattern, or you're thinking of the notes, or you're just using your ear because you've heard these sounds so many times. I don't care which one it is, but you really know how to get around the neck, right? And so you could use that to your advantage in so many ways beyond just playing a Mixolydian scale because it's a G7. Yeah. So might as well play that one, right? Yeah, they have simple, practical versions too. Dan said he's got to jump. Miss you, but we'll catch you next time.
And I would say that Mike is probably using them, but doesn't realize he's using them, right?
Sure.
So like when you're playing the 5 chord, you know, you're playing that flat 7, right?
Right.
But when you're playing the 1 chord or the 4 chord, you're playing the major 7. If you need to add the 7, right? So that's a modal idea, right?
Sure.
You know, where the 7th is, whether it's a major 7 or a minor 7. Likewise. You know, if you're like playing a 3 chord and you're toggling between the 3 and the 4, you know, that half step, that's a Phrygian idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're probably applying the modes in CCM in ways that you just haven't thought about looking at it yet, because you're thinking about it as being something, you know, magical or mystical.
Yeah.
Sure.
I would say that you're probably using it. And if you really take a look at what you're playing, because I have like 600 CCM charts, because that's basically what I do. You know, it's in there. You just probably haven't thought about it from a modal perspective in terms of what you're doing.
Well, that's the, you know, I mean, I play a lot of CCM, and she's moved, the band leader's moving more into like Israel Houghton stuff, right? And man, I'm telling you, it gives me fits. I'm like, holy cow, what are they doing here? So,
and here's the thing: if you practiced your modes, like if you could just like walk a quarter note all the way up and down the neck in the key of C, like, well, that'll help you do gospel.
Yeah, oh yeah, no,
you know that like
my ears can hear it. It's just getting my hands to do it. You know, that's because
which is why
I played in a lot of church bands where we had a great lead guitarist, good keyboardist. They never wanted me to step out of the root 5, 4, 5. You know, I just kind of hung out up down there. So then now, you know, they don't. I'm surprised at my age they wanted me to play bass. They don't have any young guys that wanted to play. So I was like, okay, they found, you know, here I am.
Yeah, but you'll get it.
Yeah. No, I'm enjoying it. I am. You know, and I'm retired now, and I can spend a lot more time practicing. But I get lost on those gospel, you know, type songs because it's like, holy cow, man.
And so if someone said, hey, for the next 8 bars, we're just in the key of F. Okay, well, if you know how to walk up and down the neck on all the different modes in the key of F, you might not know what's happening between bar 1 and 5 and 7. Like, you might not know what's happening, but if you just walk over those modes, it's going to sound good, you know? So like that could be a thing where you're, honestly, I think this is the biggest implication for modes in music theory in general. Why do I need to know D, F sharp A, that's a D major chord, versus D, F, A, now it's minor. And if you make it an A flat, now it's diminished. Like, why does any of that matter? I don't think it does unless you get stuck, because I think this is number 1. That's the Conan O'Brien theme song. Like, I don't know why I started humming that all of a sudden. What's more important is that my ear says something and then my fingers can go figure it out. And if I can't, oh, so he's going from the root and just adding the blue note. So it's the first 5 notes of a major scale, and then they're adding a chromatic tone in there. Like, I couldn't hear it at first, so I broke it down. I thought of the theory, and I looked at the notes, and I was like, oh, okay, that's what it is. Now I can play it. You know what I mean? Like, you could get to it when my ear runs out of ideas, when my creativity is not there, then I'll just look at what key I'm in. I'm like, have we tried a de-augmented chord? That would be interesting. That's not in the song. Let's try that. And maybe it sounds like shit. We won't know until we try it, and then we'll course correct, right? Yeah. And that's the craft of songwriting, you know? So I think modes, music theory, all that stuff, how do you actually use it? Maybe you don't, you know? I haven't used the word interceremoniously since it was on my 7th grade spelling test. Right? But if you ask me for a word with 7 syllables, interceremoniously, 8 syllables, I got one for you. You know what I mean? Like, but I know what adjectives and verbs and nouns are. You just need to know the basic stuff, you know? And if you're writing a paper and you're like, I need to add more words to it, throw in some adjectives. If you know grammar, we didn't go for a walk. We went for a short walk. We went for a short walk around a windy road that led to nowhere. I'm writing a song now, aren't I? You know what I mean? Like, this is getting a little bit more interesting. It's not just, you know, like listen to a 5-year-old tell a story. Yeah. And then we did this, and then we did this, and then we did this, and then we did, and then guess what? And then guess what? And then we did this. Like, that's not a very elaborate, eloquent story. You can do more damage if you just know a little bit of grammar. Couple of verbs, couple of adjectives, it'll do a lot of damage. So the equivalent to that is the modes, major and minor triads. If you've got that on lock, and when I say lock, I mean, like, how do you spell car? If you didn't go C-A-R, I don't think you know how to spell car, right? Like, you should get to it that fast. You don't need to go, hold on, let me ask Google really quick, right? These are 3-letter words. The, T-H-E, cat, C-A-T, D major, D, F sharp A. Like, it really is that simple. These are small, tiny things, but I get it. There's 26 letters. It's hard to get them all, right? So yeah. It's a lot harder than I'm making it out to be, but I always try to look at things like they're that simple, you know. Helps me conceptualize and knock it out when it's like, oh, I already know how to do this. You know, it's just a different lane, a different version of it. So Mike, I don't know if that helps out at all, but
no. You know what? I am totally enjoying the lessons. I don't know if I told you I bit off more than I can chew. I think because I joined Scott's Academy too.
Nice, yeah. Scott's a good friend of mine. Yeah, he's a great program over there.
I'm getting so much thrown at me right now. It's like I'm doubling up on my Prevagen. So
nice.
But yeah, I mean it's good for me. I can tell on my playing, you know, it's popping out. Unfortunately, I shouldn't do it on Sunday mornings because that's.
Well, you got to keep this in mind too. Music is an art and a science, and I won't say it's more one or the other, but like you can take a scientific approach to it and be like, oh, this formula works every time, or you can take a more artistic approach and say that worked. Let's deconstruct it and do the opposite. Let's see if that works, and you can get great results with both. So I always tried to not tell people you should do this, you should do that. I never recommend bands to listen to, like, oh, you're a bass player, you've got to check out this band. Like, maybe you don't. maybe you don't like that. Maybe that's going to ruin you, you know? Yeah, it's a personal journey. Everyone's on it. And, you know, the important thing is, I think, grab as much as you can and try to apply it to what you do, you know? And if it's a technique or a trick that you ended up not ever needing, cool. That's fine too. Like, you don't need, there's not a place, you don't have to use everything, you know? I spent hours and hours and hours and hours when I was a kid, like doing all this Billy Sheehan 2-hand tapping trills. No one's ever paid me to do that. not a single time in my, you know, that solo on that song that Dan learned. Like, no one wants me to do that, but I spent hours and hours and hours enjoying it. And I have sometimes, like, it comes up where they say, hey, bass player, do a solo. And they get that. And they're like, oh, shit, we didn't see that coming. Because the whole night, that's what I was doing, you know? So, yeah, dude, it all feeds into itself. It's all good stuff. You know, the important thing is to have fun. Don't bite off more than you can chew. Obviously, you know, you want to, you know, be, what's the word I'm looking for? Realistic about what you're trying to do. But at the same time, dude, aim for the stars. And if you end up at the moon, you're way further ahead than anyone who just didn't go anywhere and didn't do anything.
Yeah. Well, I love the instrument and I'm enjoying it, you know, so.
That's the point. That's what it's all about. Guys, I do need to get going. Is there any last minute, anything I can help you out with? Nah.
Nice.
All right. Well, yeah, Hans, Mike,
all.
Dwayne. So that's what our live meetups look like. I'd love to see you at the next one. So remember, there's a link in the description. Click on that and bring your bass, bring your questions, and come hang out with a bunch of cool bass players from around the world. Plus, there's a free 14-day trial, which gives you access to not just the live meetups, but the library of over 600 plus bass lessons. We add new ones every single month. Plus, we do community challenges every month. I'd love to see you there. So just click on that link. Free trial. You literally have nothing to lose. And I'd love to see you at the next live meetup.